Well, another mini-series in the bag. We survived and it was pretty okay. Let's go back to the main story and see how that progresses, yeah? Starting off with the cover, it definitely looks like we're in for a high-energy wait, what the hell is wrong with Sally here? I mean, I know rodents are generally flexible, but that looks ridiculous. The others are better in terms of posing, though Sonic's legs look a little bit too high right now, but there's very little cohesion to them. Tails looks surprised, Bunny looks excited and is looking towards the reader. Sonic looks serious. Antoine is charging forward with sword drawn. It just doesn't really impress that much, like these are placeholder images that were composited into the shot after the fact. I hope that isn't foreshadowing for what's coming up. We open up on a shot of the floating island as a melodramatic narrator defines the state of things by letting us know what tyranny, war, neutrality, and guardian mean. And then we immediately cut to Sonic and Knuckles beating the crap out of each other, and I can already feel my interest waning. Sonic has apparently demanded that Knuckles hand over the Chaos Emerald on the island, you know, the thing that's keeping it in the air right now, but didn't tell him why. Knuckles, of course, doesn't want anything to do with this, and so the two have a little back and forth with each other. It takes Tails showing up and explaining the situation about King Acorn to get the two to lay off of one another. When Knuckles brings up the possibility of them using rings from the grotto, Sonic hastily stops Tails from revealing the rings that they have, trying to appeal to Knuckles' better side. Knuckles, however, still refuses, saying that his duty to his home is more important than anything right now. Sonic states that he's going to regret not helping Sally heal her father, with Knuckles saying that he already does regret having to choose between helping an old friend and his duty. We cut back to Knothole, where Tails accidentally lets slip the fact that Sonic got into another fight with Knuckles, and while Sonic manages to deflect any criticism by handing over the sack full of rings he was carrying, it doesn't stop Tails from explaining everything to Sally over lunch later. Uncle Chuck comes in after checking on the king and unfortunately reports that the rings didn't help. Sonic's initially pretty bummed about this, but then Sally and Chuck reveal that they found an old scroll that might hold the cure. They were on the right track, wanting to use a magical talisman to heal the king, and they think the one that they need might just be the magical crown of acorns. Sonic says that they're probably out of luck, since the king was wearing the crown when he was cast into the zone initially, and they never found it while rescuing him. But Sally, based on the scroll detailing the protocol for keeping the crown safe, says that the crown is kept in the Hall of Limbo, but doesn't say where that is. But Chuck believes that they might be able to use the rings to find the temple, as the rings can be used to gain knowledge as well as power. Okay, a bit of an ass-pull, but sure. Add to it, they need to head out to get a new power ring from the Lake of Rings in the morning. No reason given why they can't use all of the other rings they gathered. I'm assuming they were all drained being used on the king or something. Uncle Chuck unfortunately has to take his leave of them to get back to his post before he's missed, while the others prepare for the next day. This is starting to sound a lot more like a quest than Sonic Quest ever was. Cut to the next day when they're heading towards the Lake of Rings, where a new ring is due to appear in a few minutes. Worried that the location of the lake might have been compromised due to the combat ambush from before, they've set up a meeting with Fly Freddy to figure out what Robotnik already knows. However, when they get to the meeting point, they're met by Sleuth Dog, who says that Fred's cover was almost blown and that he's there to detail the report while Fred runs damage control. Sally's more than a little skeptical, as that's not standard operating procedure, but Sonic, being the impatient hardhead that he is, ignores the potential danger and leads Sleuth to the lake, as Sleuth states that Robotnik wasn't able to get any information out of the combots that were destroyed, and then he betrays them. Yep, Sleuth's been working as a double agent to get the location of the lake from Sally and the others and calls in a small group of SWAT bots to capture them. However, they aren't too keen on getting taken prisoner and show off some pretty good combat skills. Tails even manages to kick down a small group of them. But just as it seems like they're getting the upper hand, Sleuth calls in a trump card, a newly roboticized Freddy. The laser blasts from Fred seem to pin them down for a moment before Sleuth is shoved into the water by the timely arrival of Bunny, who helps to incapacitate more of the bots. Sonic leaps for the newly appearing ring just as Fred aims his blaster at him, just before Knuckles comes in to make the save and knock the fly away. Having gained the power ring, Sonic uses it to blow away the rest of the bots. After arresting Sleuth, Sonic says they have to find a way to restore Freddy, while Knuckles reveals that, hey, he brought the Chaos Emerald so they could use it to save the king. So, did he have a spare up there, or is the island crashed into the sea now, or what? Cut back to Knothole, where Chuck reveals that he was concerned about a potential double agent working for Robotnik, and when he found out about it, he got into contact with Knuckles, who agreed to help so long as he got the emerald back when they were done with it. They use the energy of the emerald to try and heal the king, but it only makes him crystallize faster, almost turning his entire body into mineral. Thankfully, as soon as they stop the process, he returns to normal, but Knuckles says that the energies are just too mysterious for them to use effectively. Now left with no other option than to find the Crown of Acorns, Sonic tries using the Power Ring to gain knowledge, a feat that apparently knocks him flat on his ass. Unfortunately, he doesn't find the location of the crown. Instead, he learns that the Sword of Acorns has a magical link to the crown, and that will tell him where to find it, but it didn't tell him where to find the sword. The whole situation causes Sally to start giving up hope until Knuckles, of all characters, comes to her aid, telling her that he's not about to have her lose her father twice. Not when he understands the pain of losing a parent. Pretty sure most of the freedom fighters understand that, but okay then, it gets Knuckles to promise to help them find the sword and the cure as quickly as he can. This story is a bit all over the place. First off, it's once again a reference overload, to the point where even the footnotes start making fun of how many references to past issues it starts making. The whole thing with the power rings being able to grant knowledge as well as power was a really annoying retcon, because it basically means they could have used them at any point to try and find out anything. Though given how vague it is on what they wanted to know at the end of the issue, that might be why they haven't used it before. Oh, and then there's the whole beginning scene which just skips all pretense and just has Sonic and Knuckles fighting each other right at the start. While this opening definitely doesn't paint Sonic in a particularly good light, it's more kind to Knuckles, who does make it clear that while he has his duty, he is torn between having to choose between it and the happiness of an old friend, which makes his return later in the comic feel a bit more genuine, even if we don't get to see his change of heart firsthand. Still, his moment with Sally at the end definitely seems quite genuine. I also appreciate the working in of Sleuth as a traitor, mostly because now I feel that my hate for him is completely justified, rather than just hating him for his name alone, and it leads into a pretty good action scene with some nice heroics and last-minute saves that succeeds in making all of our heroes look capable and badass. Still no word on why they couldn't just use that giant sack full of rings from the start to try and gain knowledge rather than using the new ring that almost cost them the location of their infinite power supply. In terms of art, it's fine for the most part, not a whole lot of weird or off-model stuff. The cover is the thing that sticks out the most to me, but that was done by Pat Spaziante in a rare miss for him. The interiors for the story were done by Art Mawhinney and Phil Sheehy. And for the most part, it's perfectly fine. Just doesn't really have much standout about it compared to before. Though I will say, especially early in the comic, it does feel like some of the expressions were off, like Sally smiling during the time where it really doesn't feel like she would. Anyway, now that we have a character going on an actual quest, let's see how this plays out in the backup story. We join Knuckles and Tails riding in the submarine again. Tails is taking him to Down Under in hopes of finding a way to communicate with the ancient walkers. Since they're trying to find a magic sword, they might as well ask a magic source after all. But Tails also points out that they only really show up when something big happens, such as Sonic's billionth ring. They land on the shores of Down Under, and after some fruitless searching around the big crater where Tails met Aether, they finally run into the echidna in question. Both he and Knuckles have some strong words for one another, Knuckles calling him a coward for abandoning his duties as guardian, and Aether saying that Knuckles' gaze is far too narrowly focused on protecting just his home, rather than the world or the universe at large. Despite their differences, he does help at Tails' request, sending the two into some sort of spiritual world where they meet the ancient walkers. They are informed that there's no way that a Chaos Emerald would help the king, but when they ask about the sword and crown, they're suddenly sent flying through the cosmos and shown images of several characters we have yet to meet. A sorcerer, a wizard, an alchemist, a charlatan, an enchantress, a paladin. This is starting to sound more and more like a D&D campaign. Anyway, they're told that by seeking out these characters, they may find some clues as to where the sword is hidden. Knuckles, however, tells Tails to head back to Knothole, and that he'll solve the problem on his own. Good to see that all the lessons about teamwork and whatnot he was supposed to have learned in his miniseries are still sticking with him. And with a real quest in mind, we end our comic here. This is a pretty good introduction to Knuckles' search for the Sword of Acorns. It calls back to the events that happened in the past without overloading us with the references like the main book did, mostly due to the fact that they only had 8 pages to tell the story, and lays the groundwork for the quest that will be happening over the next few issues. What's more, it's nice enough to not lead into yet another miniseries. Instead, it seems like the quest will be told to us piecemeal through backup stories for a change. Well, sure makes my job easier. Artwork in this story is also really good. Art Mawhinney handles the interiors this time, assisted by Brian Thomas, but the pages do seem to have a fair bit more detail to them this time compared to the main book. Expressions and posing in particular are quite well done, and while we only get to see their faces, the designs of the new characters do manage to catch my eye and make me want to hear more of this story, so kudos for that. Next time, we're going to be looking at— oh god, no! No!